Hello, this is Patrick Ash, author, musician, elder millennial with the angst to go with it. And today I want to do a ranking of my favorite band, and that is U2. So, uno, dos, tres, catorce. It does actually make sense now that they have 14 albums, but it didn't at the time. All right, so many people are usually surprised, be like, really, that's your favorite band? They're so, typical and radio friendly or whatever the hell. And little history for me is that I hated them for a long time. I'd heard of the radio songs like back in the 90s, like Mysterious Ways played, and a few other, like I think Lemon was big at the time. And I was just like, why do people like this band? It's just so, I didn't see the point. And so it took a few years, and I was kind of like worn down where I think like the Batman Forever song, Hold Me, Throw Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. All right, I'll give them that one. And then I'd hear some of their deep cuts at random points, and then gradually being like, there's something to it. And I usually sum it up as it's both riff based, which is actually appeals to my metal side, and atmospheric. In fact, the guitar work of The Edge and David Gilmour of Pink Floyd, my second favorite band, they're both very heavy into use of effects to create atmospheres and tone, just different feelings. And it's not about proving anything. It really is about just the musicianship. And so, anyway, so it took me a long time. It was very gradual. And then by the time I did realize it, I was like, oh crap, they're such a dorky band, and I'm getting really into them. And then as I started getting albums, I realized the deep cuts are actually really where they thrive. And so obviously if you're watching this, you're probably a YouTube fan, or you might follow my blog and be like, what the hell, dude? I thought you were an Enneagram 4. Aren't you all about being unique? And it's like, yeah, well, in uniqueness, it sometimes, it's the whole rebel to rebellion thing. Sometimes it's admitting when something that is popular or commonplace is something that you do highly enjoy. And I will say, because recently I've talked about program evaluation and working on public service and nonprofits, U2 is essentially Idealism, the band. And I actually feel like a lot of the hate for Bono and the band and whatever is because like, oh, they think they're so good and high and mighty, and to hell with that. I feel like a lot of the criticisms are cynical. I mean, if you just don't like the music, you don't like it. But they say, oh, he's so egotistical. I'm like, what does he say that's egotistical? Well, he does all these causes. Like, yeah, I'm a program evaluator. I'm all about some causes. I think some of his causes are more effective than others, for sure. But his lyric in a few songs, primarily in the title track for Europa, Dream Out Loud. And I think that's what being in public service is all about. So I want to do this. I'm hoping to keep it kind of, I've only got like half an hour until my family comes home. So we'll see. So my ranking of the 14 albums of U2, my favorite band. Again, begrudgingly, they have been that way for about 20 years. I'm still just like, but they're so dorky. I love these other obscure bands like Solstafir and Lacrimosa, and I could go on and on. But anyway, alas, it is what it is, as they say. It sticks with me. That's why I love Floyd and some of the other big names, because they do endure. All right. All that being said, let's rank the 14 albums. Okay, at 4 minutes. So some of these are going to be somewhat popular picks. Some of them are not going to be. But I'm going to start at the bottom with Songs of Innocence, or what I've sometimes called Songs of Infamous. This is that album that they got some notoriety for in all the wrong ways, because they threw it on everyone's, iTunes or whatever. And I would also call this the worst album. There's still a few tracks I like. I think I actually do really like Every Breaking Wave and Song for Someone. I think Iris was a pretty good song. But a lot of these are just very ho-hum, okay-ish. They sound more like B-sides, which oddly enough, the B-sides for this album are better than a lot of the main tracks, like Lucifer's Hands and Crystal Ballroom and know this for another album I'm thinking of. But it actually had, the edition I have has the second disc with the acoustic sessions. I actually think those are better than a lot of the main tracks. So, and the song they had like as like a little preview was Invisible, which I actually think is better than all the, it's like not even an official song. It's like, I think it's a hidden track on disc 2. And I consider it better than all the other tracks on this album. And so it's very ho-hum overall. I feel like it's very safe. Like the first time I listened to it, I liked it. But it was like, oh, this is good. All right, this is a good change of pace from the next album I'll talk about. But then I was like, it didn't grow at all. It was just very okay. So it's got a few good songs, but for the most part, I dub it Songs of Infamous for both the fact that they threw it on everyone's iTunes as, you know, basically a marketing gimmick or whatever, and that it's not that great. So I like all their albums to some degree or another. But anyway, so next up is No Line on the Horizon from 2009. This one actually, unlike the previous, I really didn't like this when I first listened to it. I'd almost say like I disliked or hated it. And so many, like, because the lead singles, I think they've got a singles problem. It's like the opposite problem I've talked about in other videos, where some bands, like, all they have are a few good songs and filler. I feel like with U2, their singles are often not great. Like Get On Your Boots, that's a crappy ass song, as is Stand Up Comedy and a few others. Sorry. But this album did grow on me. It is very atmospheric. It's got some good tracks. A Moment of Surrender is a great song. Cedars of Lebanon is great. Unknown Caller I really like. It's more of like it's kind of wistful, dreamy, and again, just loaded with atmosphere. And that way, it kind of reminds me of their Unforgettable Fire, which is fantastic, and that's much higher up. It's just that, and I will go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight. It's very sweet. But it does have several like really just straight bad songs. I don't like the title track very much, and Get On Your Boots and Stand Up Comedy are just like, they'll have an okay riff here and there, and the rest of it's just really cheesy stuff. So, but it grew on me. It's got great atmosphere, so I really appreciate it. I have called it sloth before for Some Line on the Horizon. Like, it's supposed to be like their ambient experimental album, but it's solidly good, but just definitely among their last albums. My next pick, this one is controversial. Many people like U2, even some people that don't like U2 will say, well, this album's good. I'm like, oh, well, it falls low on my list. And that is War. Yep. I've seen it on some people's lists up in the very top. Some people even say it is their best, or at least top 5, top 3. It is a very good album. It is very riffy. I appreciate that. In fact, my kind of on and off band that's covered Like a Song, it's a great track. It's just that this album, for one thing, like No Line on the Horizon, it does have several songs that are just some of their worst, like Refugee is outright bad. I think they had like a guest producer or something. And I like Surrender, but Red Light's kind of crappy. And a lot of people like this because they've got some of their anthems, like Sunday Bloody Sunday and New Year's Day. And they're good, but they're not two of my favorite songs from them at all. They not even top 20 or 25, I would say. But it does have, I love Like a Song, and I mean, I like New Year's Day. 40 is a very, very good track. It's just that it's 10 tracks and none of them are on my like all-time, like my top list. And I feel like it's, I don't want to say entry-level U2, because I also say entry-level doesn't mean bad, but I feel like it just doesn't have as much staying power. I don't revisit as much as other albums. So, yeah, that's my take on War. Solidly good, but it's just that a few of the well-known songs doesn't give it higher ranking. So this next album, talk about a grower. Their most recent album, Songs of Experience. This one, I kind of like with Songs of Innocence. So the first time I heard it, I was like, this is pretty good. Yeah, it's all right. Okay. And then I kept listening to it, and it kept growing, and I kept liking it more and more. It feels, I don't know, like Bono was having like existential moments when they were writing this, and they kept kind of revisiting it. Now they do have very kind of true to their reputation, preachy moments on it, especially in the middle. Like the songs are more about, kind of ranting about, because Trump had just been elected when they were working on this, and so the middle of it kind of is not, it's more typical and preachy, but the beginning starts off strong, and it's more personal. It's more like very open-hearted, and I feel like that's their idealism, the band. I feel like that open-heartedness, talk about being a 4, that's part of how it appeals to me. It's sincere. I also feel like that's a lot of reason why people resent them and don't like them, is because they wear their hearts on their sleeves. Like, it is all about just, being open about how you feel. And anyway, and then starts off strong, and then towards the end of the album, they have actually several of their, I think, best songs, like Little Things That Give You Away, for me, is an all-time great. It's for sure top 20. I think Landlady's a great song too, very personal. 13, so it's got some really great songs both in the front and the back end. It's just kind of the middle ones, like I'm Not As American Soul and Summer of Love, they're just kind of okay. Red Flag Day and Showman. And it has several great B-sides as well, like Book of Your Heart that's, even though it sounds like a very typical U2 title, the actual music itself is, I think, a little bit more subtle. So this one really grew on me. The more I listen to it, it really resonates. It really kind of captures how I feel at this juncture in my life, nearing middle age. But that's just me. So I'd say I got maybe 20 minutes. Let's go with Europa. This was their like super experimental album. I mean, technically speaking, Passengers, which they worked on with other people, was even more so that way. But they've kind of gone back and forth. It's not technically a U2 album, but Europa is, and this is a interesting take. Like, they went kind of like full electronica at this point in their career. When people say, I think Henry Rollins has the critique of all the U2, Edge keeps playing that riff for all these years. Like, compare War with Europa, very, very drastically different sounds. Anyway, so they have a lot of electronica and experimentation, all that stuff, but yet also has like some quiet moments too. I feel a little bit of the industrial influence here. Apparently they were listening to Nine Inch Nails at the time. So like, you compare that kind of like loud crashing distortion with like quiet soft moments, and that happens on this album. Like, Stay Far Away So Close, the first time, which is again one of their truly great songs. The Wanderer with Johnny Cash. But then so much of it, I think, was it Adam or Larry, someone that said that it's like its own kind of drug. It's like being on drugs. It really feels that way when you listen to the child track Dream Out Loud. Absolutely. Numb and Lemon. I think Numb was the song I was thinking of earlier. I was like, kept hearing it on the radio, but but there are some songs that aren't as, some days are better than others, some songs are better than others. Daddy's Gonna Pay, it's all right, but so not one of their all-time best, but it for sure is a very, very good album, very interesting entry, with kind of a lot of emotion packed in with their experimenting. So, all right, speaking of which, the next album I would put above Europa is Pop. At the time, Pop was controversial because I think to some degree people were ready for you to it's like, okay, we've heard you experimenting, we've heard all that, and then now you're doing all this like literal pop culture stuff where like lots of references to like Coke and Michael Jackson, and the lead single was Discotheque, which still sounds a little cringy, my personal opinion. But on the back end, a lot of it is very, very spiritual. Obviously, if God would send his angels last night on earth, like staring at the sun, even like there is that spiritual element throughout it that I think they were going for underneath like the kind of commercial, like intentional commercialism, if that makes sense. Very much lampooning their status. Several songs on it, like Miami and Playboy Mansion and If We Wear That Velvet Dress, they're just okay. They're not great. Gone is a great song about Michael Hutchence, and Please is one of their all-time greatest. I absolutely love. In fact, that's like in my top 10. I love that track. It not only gets through kind of like the troubles in Northern Ireland and like religious conflicts, but it's like deeply personal. Like the lyrics are one of those things like and this is kind of, I think, why I fell for the band, so to speak, is that every now and then, like, that lyric in the song just strikes you. Yeah, and Wake Up Dead Man. That is, honestly, that song is like Christian existentialism summed up. The very first line, Jesus, help me. I'm alone in this world, and that fucked up world it is too. I love it. That's one of my all-time favorite lyrics right there. Okay, so yeah, that's where pop is. It's sort of a love it or hate it album, but for me, it's almost it's overall like I think it's underappreciated and a bit overhated. But it also, yeah, there are moments where you can tell they weren't quite sure what to do with the song. So I think they've said that themselves. But anyway, let me move on to, I know this is kind of going through it quick. I figure I'm going to talk forever. So in a way, having only maybe 15 minutes, it's good for me. All right. Next up is Rattle and Hum, often called their victory lap from the Joshua Tree, which of course we'll get to later. But this is, in a way, it's that kind of a soundtrack for the movie or the documentary, which got a lot of criticism from the band and critics saying like, oh, they're basically just basking in their popularity and it's an ego trip. But I feel like the performances were very great. And at this point in their career, their sound, Bono's voice, they've really meshed well. And so many of these songs work, even if, yeah, I talk about like Europa and Pop, they were kind of like going off in a certain direction and kind of hitting the wall, so to speak. And this, of course, is where they were hitting a different wall, and that is like their Americana country, a little, not quite country, but more Americana, old-fashioned rock and roll thing. But some of the songs are covers and all that, but some of the originals on this are really good. And I love Rescue Me. That I feel is a touching track. Their song with B.B. King, When Love Comes to Town, fantastic song. Heartland is it's got a bunch of great imagery in the lyrics that, again, so much of the chemistry of the band is that the lyrics, the singing, and the music just go together so well. It really does kind of establish a feeling and a place, and it can vary. It's just that it's just, anyway. Of course, All I Want Is You is a classic track. I even like some of the other, Van Diemen's Land and Desire, kind of fun to kick around on a guitar. So just very, very kind of more deep, satisfying album. So yes, great track. Next up is All That You Can't Leave Behind. This is the what they often call their comeback album, or reapplying for the best band in the world. I know it sounds so egotistical, whatever. I actually just got this edition recently. So this one, I originally, especially after Pop, I was like, okay, I want them to go back to their roots. They've done lots of experimenting and programming and all that stuff. Let's go back to just writing rock songs. So sort of like with Songs of Innocence, like first listen, like, okay, yes, back to form. But this didn't, originally, like, I loved it, and then, like, I don't love it quite as much. It's still really good, of course. Obviously, it wouldn't be this song in the rank. Some of the individual songs are some of their best. Walk On and Kite, I feel like back-to-back, two of their best songs, period. I love those tracks. And some of the other ones, Stuck in a Moment, in a Little While, it's kind of, like, there's several, like, very kind of sweet, touching songs, Wild Honey. Peace on Earth is actually genuinely, I feel like, heartfelt for being like a very typical save the world sort of thing. Grace is very sweet. And now this edition includes Ground Beneath Our Feet, which is that's one of my favorite U2 songs. I don't know if it's officially considered part of the album or not, but that is they did it with Salman Rushdie, and it's a great song, and yeah. So overall, very good album. But so I mean, Beautiful Day. That's a song that everyone knows. I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. Elevation. The lyrics are kind of ridiculous. If you've heard it, you know what I'm talking about. But those are like the lead singles, and I'm like, see, now I know a lot of people don't like U2 because like those songs, like, they're okay. Whereas others on the album, as I mentioned, are fantastic. Walk On, like, anyway. So this album just did not stick as much with me over the years. I still really like it. It still was kind of like a little bit of a return to form. It's just, yeah, it just hasn't stayed with me as much. Next up, October. This is a bit bold, a bit unpopular. I think many people would consider this one of the lower albums. I disagree. It's very riffy and atmospheric. I feel like in that sense, it's very U2. And so that's why I keep coming back to it. And people often say like, oh, well, it's that trouble. I think they even called like their troubling second album that they weren't sure what they were doing, which, as I said, I've heard some of that on like at moments on Pop and other albums, but there's so many great. I mean, Gloria is one of their best songs. It's fantastic. Like throughout, remind myself of the track listing, trying to be a good fan, but Tomorrow, the title track, October, Fire, I love that song when I first heard it, and I still do. It sticks with you. Is That All? It's just very riffy. You could feel like that youthful energy they had, and like to its title, it feels like the seasons are changing. That the leaves are starting to fall. Going from Boy, the first album, there's maturity. There's, I don't know, kind of like facing the challenges and uncertainty. So yeah, it's a great album. I don't know why. And just listen to Larry's drums on this album. Rejoice is a great track to hear, like that little drum solo he does. And anyway, just great stuff. Really love October. I know my friend out there that I mention frequently, he knows who he is, and he's a big fan too. So hooray. All right. Next album is How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. This one has stuck with me better than its predecessor, All You Can't Leave Behind. They were kind of similar time period, similar sound. I feel like the songwriting on this one's stronger though, as though they were much more intentional. It's just a song-forward album, if that makes sense. Like they've talked about it in retrospect that it doesn't mesh as a whole, and that I think Bono said like it bothered him that it doesn't. I know what they're saying, but I feel like the individual songs are strong enough individually that it really still makes it a very great listen. Everyone knows Vertigo. I referenced it earlier. Another one of their like big singles, and I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. But Sometimes You Can't Make It on Your Own. That's one of their greatest. City of Blinding Lights. I mean, these were also singles, but not as well known. But these are great songs. City of Blinding Lights. Then there was the single All Because of You. That's one of my least favorite on the album. One Step Closer is very good. That's a sleeper track. Really like that one. And Yahweh. Oh, that is another one of their really great. Like it's both. Talk about Christians. It's kind of like a counterpoint to Wake Up Dead Man. That was the more dire Christian existentialism, whereas Yahweh is more of to their reputation, the exalting, the lifting, the lyrics are just powerful. Goes with the music so well. All right, love that. I also love Miracle Drug. I feel like that one doesn't get enough credit. It's a more of a literalist song, but it has just several really striking lines. Anyway, so great album. I think it holds up well. Now we'll get to the really, really good stuff. Now we go to The Unforgettable Fire. This is talking about, I think I mentioned earlier, I love their riffy side. I love their atmospheric side. This is more on the atmospheric side. I feel like that's just listening to Edge's tone on this album, he using, his masterful use of delay, along with kind of Daniel Lanois coming in with the keys and the atmosphere in the background, and just great songwriting. I mean, Pride, of course, is a big song from this. Bad. I think I used to love Bad more than I do now. Like, of course, if you see it with the Live Aid version, it really is powerful. But I still love the title track, Unforgettable Fire. Love that song. In fact, that was another one that our band has covered, and it's just a great song, very riffy and sort of homecoming is that way. When people question their musicianship, it's like you've listened to a few of their popular songs. I don't think you've really listened to them, but personal opinion. Just throughout, MLK, of course, one of their great tributes. I think in a way I almost like that more than Pride. I feel like it really both in its feel and its simplicity, I feel like is a great hymn to Dr. King. So it's Promenade was a song that we had like on our wedding playlist. It was just sweet and kind of fit the occasion. So love Unforgettable Fire. That's one that it really is kind of U2 at their most atmospheric, I'll put it that way, and so many great songs. Okay, top three. I actually feel like I'm cooking well. I'm probably like speaking too fast, and but boy, their first album, their debut album. For a while I kind of struggled between this and a couple of the previously mentioned albums, but in terms, like, Unforgettable Fire was their most atmospheric. This is their riffiest. Boy, is when they were really, they are technically a post-punk band, and you hear it all over this first album. So many great riffs. You hear Edge on his Explorer, Tuned a Half Step Down, Out of Control, one of their, I mean, that's in my top 5. Yeah, I absolutely love that track. And Out of Control and Electric Co, one of their best songs. So it also has, of course, I Will Follow. That's one of their popular ones, but The Ocean and Stories for Boys and Twilight. There's a lot of songs on this album that are just very cool atmospheric riffs, and it's like post-punk at its peak. It is both idealistic, and they're very self-aware of that idealism. I mean, that's the title of the album. And then Shadows and Tall Trees at the end, it captures so many thoughts and feelings, and just has a very punchy approach to songwriting. So love the sound, this album. It's just a true great. And yeah, so this is very solid rock on which they built their band. All right, the two greatest albums, and if you've ever paid much attention to the albums above me, you know obviously that these would be the top two. And I will say, yeah, I usually default to the order I'll give, but they are like razor thin margin apart. So let me first speak to what's the runner-up. I often feel like maybe it shouldn't be, maybe it should be number one, but anyway, and that is Octane Baby. Octane Baby. I have actually visited Hansaton Studios in Berlin, and still my German pronunciation could be better. So this album, absolutely fantastic. I mean, this was where they really balanced kind of all the different sides of, yeah, they're riffing, their atmosphere, they're experimenting, both like their poppier, hookier sides. So you've got your mysterious ways and, even better than the real thing. But you also have like their existential, their yearning side. Obviously, one of their truly all-time greatest songs. That one holds up. I mean, it means different things at different times, and even different performances. There are times where I feel like it's a relationship song, and it could be a difficult relationship, or it could be a ruined relationship. It could even be between oneself and other people, oneself and one's deity. It's just, there's so many interpretations that could go into it. And then you have something like Until the End of the World, or the Fly, where the musicianship, I feel, for people again that impugn their musicianship, there's both strong riffs and effects, and there are moments where, especially in the Fly solo, it's like, how does it get any better? It's just very, very balls to the wall on both the songwriting and the expression, like the heart on their sleeves kind of expression. But there's lots of I call them idealism, the band, and yet this is more of it has a cynical or more, I guess, grown up feel, look, taste, or whatever you want to say. And in a way, now at this point in its career, it is one of their earlier albums, but really it is kind of in a way, it's like the flip side of Boy, but also the #1 album that I'll get to in a minute. So I think they've described it themselves as four men chopping down the Joshua Tree. In terms of just the sound of the album, the distortion, the loops, the hooks, it is that way, and yet the earnestness, the yearning, it's just, especially I think in the last three tracks, which I think are three of their greatest songs. That is Ultraviolet, Light My Way, Acrobat, and of course, I draw a blank. Love Is Blindness. I've got these editions that don't have they're like the special editions, but anyway. But that trilogy at the end is just, oh Lord, it's one of those things I can hardly put it into words. In a way, kind of defies a review. But Ultraviolet and Acrobat in particular, they still, after all these years, they mean different things to me. They get to me. It's very, very striking and powerful. And there's So Cruel and Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World. Some of those more chill songs, I think that balance it out pretty well. But obviously one all-time great there. Top 5. But I'll also say Ultraviolet for sure, and probably even Acrobat. 3 top 5 from this album. So I will, before I get to #1, I will flex my credit a little bit. One of my all-time favorite U2 songs. It's not even a B-side. It is a bootlegged studio recording, and that is Mercy. So I think they have an edition for Wide Awake in Europe, but they changed the lyrics, they changed the sound. I don't like that one as much. The actual bootleg version from the studio is one of their all-time greatest performances. So absolutely. I have heard or I think I read a review somewhere that said this was U2 at their most U2, and that's probably a good way to put it. There's a moment toward the end where they all come together. Sorry, I know I'm gushing. This is from a metalhead, and a guy usually just likes to listen to obscure power metal and atmospheric black metal and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so all-time great. If I had to pick one, I really feel like it's a razor thin margin between these two albums. But if I had to pick all-time favorite U2 album, all-time favorite album, it would be The Joshua Tree. Yeah, I talk about trouble putting it into words. Now, is it a perfect album? No. But is it, obviously, comes about as close as I think someone can? Yeah, I mean, it starts off with I would say their, for sure, #1 song ever, and that is Where the Streets Have No Name. Hearing it performed live, on Rattle and Hum, and even just if you see them live, it's on another level. And of course, well-known tracks like I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, With or Without You, and Bolt the Blue Sky. Our high school band used to enjoy playing that cover, but it's just track for all the tracks. I just love the pieces. I will say, with one little exception, and that is Trip to Your Wire. It's okay, but it's the obvious weak link. With all the other tracks are just amazing. Red Hill Mining Town is one of their greats. Running to Stand Still, and One Tree Hill, Exit, Mothers of the Disappeared. It's just, it's hard to put into words. They really took their songwriting to another level. It's earnest, it's atmospheric, it's kind of dedicated to an ideal that you're pursuing. And again, still, it's right there in that song title. That's like the feel of the album, that you're still going after something good and unknown, and it's everything from the personal to the political to, again, the spiritual and divine. And it's and they often talk about it as being about America, the country, not so much the land, but kind of the idea. Bono talks ad nauseum, of course, about America's not just a country, it's an idea. If you're a fan, you've heard that a million times. But it really is all these things, and every time I come back to it, it's like a new adventure, new experience. And I think there's a line in the show Freaks and Geeks where it's like, I wish I hadn't heard it so I could go back and hear it again for the first time. And this actually was the album where I went from, God, I think I have to admit myself that I'm actually a U2 fan, to when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. It is. And then a month or two later, damn, I keep listening to this album. It's like it kept building and staying, and even after that was over 20 years ago, I still do. It's like once something clicks in your mind, it's like you can't go back. This band at their peak. It's really hard to pick between this and Octane Baby, but they're both true essentials, truly best albums from best band. My family is home, so I should go to see them. I hope this has been enjoyable. That's my ranking. I'll see if I can maybe share my what your U2 album says about you, which is, I think, kind of funny. But yeah, all-time favorite band. Not for lack of trying otherwise. Sometimes you just have to, own up to it, admit to it, and at the end of the day, I love it. I've seen them like 10 times, and yeah, there's so much more I could say, but hopefully others will chime in, tell me what your picks are, what you do like or don't like about different albums, and I'm gonna go see how our little kid's doing. As you can hear, not so well. Monday morning, 18 years are dawning. Woke the world with bawling, I think the lyric is, Bono. So I'll go take care of that. Take care, like, subscribe, all that stuff. See ya.